some important dates to pay attention to when it comes to you getting into a real estate contract. Okay, so just like every contract will have a date, right? There are some important dates that you have to take into consideration, or actually pay attention to when you're in the process of buying a house, because if those are not well followed, you could find yourself losing in some aspects, right? You could find yourself um, not being able to catch up with the number of days you have to actually go into closing, because of course you can't take forever to close a house when you have a bid on a house, right? You actually have specific days you actually have to get all your stuff together, and then the final day of closing. So today we're going to be talking about some 5 dates, even though it's a long list. So today we're going to focus on 5 dates at first, okay? And so what is the first date that we actually have to pay attention to when we go into contract with somebody? That, hey, I saw this house, I'm interested in buying it, right? And the seller is happy that, of course, at the end of the day, I'm going to end up selling this house and making some money. So the first date you actually have to pay attention to is the effective date. And the effective date is a date when the contract between the buyer and the sellers become legal, right? So all terms and conditions have been agreed by the both parties, right? The buyer and the seller, and it marks the starting point for meeting any other obligations toward the house. So whenever the buyer and the seller agrees to terms and conditions, of course, that day legally binds both of them. Okay, and that is called the effective date. The second date you actually have to pay attention to is offer acceptance date. So most of the time when these sellers have their houses on sale, right, they don't accept everybody, because of course it's not just one person that puts an offer into the house. Many people actually put their offer, and then these sellers take their time to see which one is best for them to go with, right? Because all offers cannot be the same, or even if they are the same amount, different people are willing to offer different things, right? Maybe I want to put a down payment more than the other person, or the other person is willing to do more of a different kind of loan on these houses, right? So of course this seller actually has to go into these different offers that have been given to her and make the best judgment for herself, right? So the day she accepts an offer from that particular buyer, that's the offer acceptance day. So the seller accepts the buyer's offer and agrees to the term and condition presented in the purchase price, or the purchase offer, sorry. So whenever he or she is accepting this offer, they actually go through the terms that you've written, because of course, like I said, everybody has different terms, right? So they agree to whatever you're saying. I'm going to do this to be able to get this house. And now once they accept that offer, that means is the offer acceptance date. The third date you want to actually take note to of is inspection contingency deadline. Maybe if you watch my previous videos, you've heard me talk about inspection contingency. That never waive this. Always make sure you have it in your file of purchase offer, right, that you're actually going in there, or in your contract. So this inspection contingency is just a deadline by which the buyer has to make sure they complete an inspection on the property. Remember I said you don't have all day or all year to actually go through the process of buying a house. So the earlier you close on a house, the better for the seller and better for you, because nobody wants to keep waiting and waiting. And moreover, the seller is not even so sure if the offer is going to end up falling through, or they're going to walk away with their money, right? So of course they don't want to sit there for the whole year waiting for you. So they want to make sure this data in place so you could do your due diligence and make sure they don't wait for you, that it's not going to work. So if in case it falls through, then they could actually look for someone else to buy this house, all right? So that inspection contingency just simply tells you, hey, this is the deadline you have. You have until this day to do your inspection in the house, so that in case any issues come up, then you can notify the seller of what you saw on your inspection report, right? So you want to make sure you do not wait until after your inspection time before you go in to do it, because you might not have enough time to negotiate of any issues that came up on that inspection report. So you want to do yourself a favor and stay within that timeline, or before the date that is actually written in your contract. All these things are going to be outlined in that contract, okay? Number 4 is going to be your appraisal contingency deadline. Just like you need an inspection deadline to make sure the seller is either willing to do the repairs after you find out, or they are willing to give you credits or reduce the price for those things, an appraiser will have to give you a fair market value, right? So you want to make sure you get an appraiser before the deadline that is given to you in the contract, so that you want to know if the property is the same price the seller is talking about, right? So if the property comes short, meaning the seller, whatever price you and the seller had agreed to, is more than whatever the appraiser said the house is worth, right? So now you want to make sure that if something like that happens, you either want to renegotiate with the seller, you want to see if you have the money to make up for the remaining price, or you have the option of walking away from that contract without being penalized. Because of course, if you do it before the deadline, the contingency actually gives you some leeway, right? So if you do it before the deadline and see that, hey, I cannot meet up with this thing, then you can have that choice. Options, right? There are options. So you can have that option to walk away without being penalized in this whole process, okay? So stick to the dates as much as possible so that you benefit from either not being able to buy the house because of some issues, or you being able to negotiate prices and your repairs with the seller before the time elapses. Because if the time elapses, I don't think the seller is going to want to do all those things, because you had enough time to give her the inspection report and they look into this, okay? Number 5 is going to be financing contingency deadline. And the financing contingency deadline is just a deadline by which the buyer must secure financing or obtain a mortgage, right, for that property. So before the end of the day, or before the day you actually go to sign that, sign the paperwork that you bought this house, of course, they have to be sure that the whoever is financing this property, could be mortgage lender, it could be your bank, or could be a credit union, whoever you go with, right? They want to make sure these people are able to give you the funds for you to buy this house. So that's why there's a contingency deadline. And this just makes sure that if the financier cannot obtain finances by this date, the buyer may have the option to terminate the contract without paying for any penalties. So who wouldn't want to walk away and not paying for penalties on a house you're not even gonna get, right? Because you were unable to secure the loan, or maybe you had some issues at the end of the closing process and the bank says, hey, we are unable to give you all the money that you asked for because the appraiser came in short because we requested for some documents and you couldn't hand it to us on time, right? So you want to make sure that you read these dates. If you don't understand, ask your realtor. If you're not working with a realtor, you can look for some professional, right? Real estate professionals that can help you with all these things. An attorney in real estate, they can help you explain these dates to you, just so that you stay in, you're on the right track and on the right path at the right time, okay? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to spend money that you're never gonna get back. After all, these sellers, they are ready to move, they are ready to sell these houses and maybe use the proceeds for something else, right? So you don't want to keep them waiting forever. You want to make sure that if you're unable to fulfill your obligations, well, they shouldn't have to wait for you for the entire time. So just make sure that you, the seller, and the buyer actually work on these dates agreed upon on these contracts so that nobody walks away hurt, right? Because it's going to be a waste of time for the seller and it's going to be a waste of time for you, the buyer, because you, the buyer, has to start the process all over in case you find another property, and the seller will have to wait to see another buyer to actually accept their offer. And now maybe they had just planned to sell their house within the next 2 months. Now they have to wait again until they find another buyer. We don't know how long they're going to wait. So just make sure that you follow these deadlines and everybody ends up without getting hurt. And this is just some of the dates. I'm going to talk about more of these dates in another video. So please do not forget to subscribe, share, and like my videos, okay? And this is just for educational purposes. All these deadlines will be written in your contract, and I'm sure most of your real estate agents will actually outline and tell you what to do, right? So they'll walk you through these different dates so you end up with your house and the seller ends up with their proceeds. So see you in the next video. Please stay safe and healthy out there. Thank you.